Paolo Banchero had his superstar night. And I feel like that's all we really should talk about, right? Maybe, I don't know. Another rough night for the Orlando Magic, but a bright night for their future on today's Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is December 7th, 2023. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert insight editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, Paolo Banchero has a superstar night. We're going to talk about what Paolo Banchero did, carrying the Orlando Magic into maybe potentially winning the game, and what it means to the team moving forward. We will then break down everything else that went wrong for the Orlando Magic and their 121-111 loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, no matter who your team is, there's a great Locked On podcast covering no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when you upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. And please give some support to our guy Koo at Locked On Pistons. He needs it right now. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I have had I don't want to call it a bet, but I've been running a scenario by a lot of people. I ran it on the PSF app. I was watching a game on Wednesday, but I've been running it by a lot of people. And I was essentially saying, I believe Paolo Banchero will get a triple-double before he has a 40-point game. Obviously, I'm wrong. Freezing cold, take me later on that. But the reason I kept making this bet or kept making this statement was I wanted to stress to everyone, or I wanted to stress to people that we need to think of Paolo Banchero not only as a scorer, that he is a well-rounded player who can do everything. The Magic use him as a point guard right now with Markelle Fultz out. He's bringing the ball up, initiating offense. He's averaging 4.5 assists per game. He's flirted a few times with the triple-double already this season. And so I often made this statement or made this kind of offhanded comment to people, both to rattle the cages a little bit, but mostly to get people to think of Paolo Banchero as more than a scorer. And I still believe that. He will get a triple-double before the end of the season. It is going to happen. But sometimes we all need a reminder of exactly why Paolo Banchero is the dominant player, is the potentially humongously strong player that we all believe can be the centerpiece of a championship team. Why Banchero is the guy that the Magic made the number 1 overall pick 2 years ago, or in 2022. Why he is the centerpiece and the most likely all-star for this team. And that is because he can put the ball in the basket. Remember earlier in the season when Banchero was struggling to score and struggling to hit 20 points and everyone was freaking out? And I said, guys, don't worry. Paolo Banchero was put on this planet to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to put the ball in the basket. Do not worry about him. Then he dropped 30 points, including the game-winning basket against the Utah Jazz, and he had another game-winning basket. He had some, he had some big scoring performances, and Paolo Banchero is up near 20 points per game all over again, adding and building upon what he did his rookie season, where his scoring was just simply incredible. And I will repeat this. The first non-center to average 20 points per game for the Orlando Magic since 2005 when Steve Francis did it. Wednesday's performance against the Cleveland Cavaliers was something else, though. Something that we have not seen with the Magic since Steve Francis, since Tracy McGrady, Victor Oladipo did it a few times, but never quite like this. Or perhaps never quite with the kind of consistency and constantness that he did. Now, look, Aaron Gordon's had 40-point games. Nikola Vucevic had 40-point games. Victor Oladipo had a 40-point game. There are other 40-point scorers. And certainly this does not feel like the last time that anyone will score 40. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like the Magic had a guy who could simply take over a game, who could simply keep the team afloat, keep the team in it, and maybe, just maybe, win them the game. Orlando has not had a player like Paolo Banchero in a very, very long time. Like that, bottom line, they have not had a player of his caliber and his capability and his smoothness, frankly, in such a long time. And in a game where nothing else worked, in a game where we're going to go over everything that just completely fizzled out in this game, Paolo Banchero gave this team a chance to win. Gave them a little bit of hope. His final stat line, 42 points, 16 for 26 shooting, 6 rebounds, 10 points in the first quarter, 10 points in the second, 12 in the third, another 10, obviously, in the fourth. On a night when the Magic did everything wrong, Paolo Banchero was the only player with a positive plus-minus. 9 for 12 from the foul line. He did it all for this team. 2 blocks on top of it. He did it all. And as Orlando tried desperately to make up a deficit that they buried themselves in, Banchero was the one guy that seemed able to keep them afloat. Look, there are plenty of reasons why the Magic were able to cut a 23-point deficit down to 6. There are plenty of reasons why the Magic could not get over the hump and turn that 6-point deficit into a lead or into a really close game. But none of that falls on Paolo Banchero's feet. Banchero did everything humanly possible to keep the Magic in this game, to give the Magic any glimmer of hope. He kept that door open as wide as he could to let the Magic in. And frankly, the Magic didn't execute on either end to get all the way through the door. It was a frustrating evening for the Orlando Magic, and we're going to talk about all the ways it was frustrating here coming up in a minute. But this is why the Magic drafted Paolo Banchero, for nights exactly like this one. And so while, yes, there is a lot to break down and a lot to clean up and a lot to be a little bit worried about after what the Magic talked to us about over the last 2 days and what they didn't execute in this game, there are things that were frustrating, but ultimately, what are you going to do about them? But this game from Paolo Banchero, that feels permanent. This will not be the last time Paolo scores 40. That I know for sure. There will be plenty more games when the Magic win when he scores 40, because there will be less outlier games than what we saw in this one against Cleveland. And Paolo again showed us what he is capable of doing. How he can be your traditional superstar that just racks up tons of points and carries a team to victory. Carries a team into the game. Couldn't carry them to victory tonight. He's a young player. He's got to learn. But carries a team and keeps them afloat. He's going to have a lot more nights like this one. And as far as everything else is concerned, what we will remember from this game is not the terrible shooting performance. We won't even necessarily remember the loss. We're going to remember the night that Paolo Banchero looked like a star, broke through that 40-point barrier, and previewed to us all what he's going to be like when the Magic need him to win a basketball game again. That's the most important thing to come from this game. There are concerns. Again, we're going to get to them here in a minute. But this was Paolo's night. And as much as I'm sure he wants it to be in a win, and I know he does, I know he is not satisfied with a 42-point game in a loss. This is a big step in his path to stardom. And the kind of stardom that's going to deliver some major results for this franchise moving forward. It was a loss, however. And as good as Paolo Banchero was, oh boy, it was a struggle. Let's count all the ways the Magic struggled and build a house with them. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at FanDuel. It is fall, it's winter almost. It's not even fall anymore. We don't know. We don't have seasons in Florida. Like why do I even try to do that? It's still football season, however, and the NFL is heating up on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get a $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action now. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season right. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Don't forget that the Locked On Network has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel today. Okay. We got the good stuff out of the way. I'm a positive person. I want to talk about good things and be a little happy when we can. And look, like I said, I do truly believe this. We're going to forget the details of this game. We're going to forget the frustrations of this game. We're going to look back at the end of the season and remember this game as the first time that Paolo Banchero scored 40 points. Got that one out of the way, like I said earlier. And there will be more of them to come. We know there will be big nights when the team when Paolo knows the team needs him to do a little bit more. And that's honestly, I didn't bring this point out enough. That's what was so amazing about Wednesday's game was you could sense Paolo understood he had to carry this team, that he had to be the one that lifted this team up. And maybe he didn't lift everyone up as much as he could or should have, but he carried a very heavy burden and carried it well. He attacked Jared Allen, got him in foul trouble, got to the foul line, got to the basket. He hit that mid-range jumper along the baseline that was just so nice. Paolo had a complete game. And in fact, the only place where maybe we could complain about Paolo was the same place that we could complain about every single player on the Orlando Magic. Why did the Magic lose this game? There are at least three things to highlight. The first is the obvious one. And you're probably wondering why it took me 13 minutes to dance around this enough before I just said it. The Magic shot 2 for 23 from beyond the arc. Yeah, it's not good. And it wasn't that they had a bunch of guys who aren't good three-point shooters taking threes. It was Franz Wagner missing all 5. It was Gary Harris missing all 4. It was Joe Ingles missing his only 1. Cole Anthony was 1 for 4. Paolo was 1 for 5. The Magic missed a ton of threes. And there were some good looks, whether they were out of rhythm or they were pressing, and we'll get to the second part of that here in a minute. At the end of the day, the Magic needed to make a dang shot. Like, just plain and simple. I don't have my make shot shirt on, the old Northwestern basketball slogan, but the Magic needed to make a shot. And, I know I've documented this. Orlando's offensive rating on the road is very terrible. Their defense typically travels. It did not in this one. We'll get to that in a minute. But this game came down to Cleveland made 14 threes, Orlando made 2. And no matter how much the Magic made up for it from the foul line, which they've been very good at, they couldn't make up for it on offensive rebounds and second chance points. This was a game where the three-point math got them. And look, Orlando missed some good looks. And if you lose a game because you miss some open shots, you live with it. The Magic got three-pointers to the guys they wanted to get them to. They did not settle for three-pointers, which I think is really important. This is a low-volume three-point shooting team. They take 28 threes per game entering the evening. They took only 23. So the Magic were down early. We'll get to that here in a minute. But the Magic were down early. They trailed by as much as 23 points. They were struggling to climb up that hill and get back into this game. They were determined to get to the basket. I'm going to give them a lot of credit for that. They were 0 for 6 in the first quarter, 0 for 4 in the second, 1 for 7 in the third, and then ended up 1 for 6 in the fourth. So again, they aren't taking a ton of threes, which is maybe part of the problem. Maybe they need to take more threes. They certainly need to continue to be aggressive and looking for threes and willing to take threes when they come. But at the end of the day, the Magic just needed to make a shot. They're down 6. They're knocking on the door. They missed a 3. Cleveland comes down and hits a 3. And when you're missing threes at the rate the Magic were missing threes, every 3 that the other team makes feels like 6. It feels double. And so you got to make shots. I have no other way to describe it. I have no other way to say it. The Magic had to make shots. You can't come back. You can't win unless you're making shots. And Orlando did the best it could to supplement that and to find ways to get to the basket and find ways to get to the foul line. But, it's hard to win when you're not making threes in this league right now. Again, I think we got to credit the Magic for the effort that they put in. They got to the line 37 times. They were 27 for 37 from the foul line. Franz Wagner made only 3 of 16 shots, still scored 14 points because he got to the line for 10 free throws. He was 8 for 10 from the foul line. Gary Harris was 1 for 7 from the floor, 6 for 6 from the foul line. Orlando found ways to make it up a little bit. So the shooting was big. I don't want to say that it wasn't big. It's the highlight. It's the headline. Everyone's talking about it. The Magic have to be better making shots and making outside shots. Those are momentum-changing plays. But I don't think that's why the Magic lost the game, to be perfectly honest. I think even Paolo said after the game, or it was either Paolo or Jamal Mosley said after the game, that because they struggled so much at the start of the game, that it caused them to press. And you could see them pressing a little bit, trying to make up ground. They were down so early, so quickly. And so you got a combination of the Magic couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, if that cliche still exists. And Cleveland making 7 of 10 3-pointers in the first quarter. Not first half, first quarter, 7 3-pointers. Magic made 2 for the entire game. That just put the Magic in a deep hole. And I think Orlando is really struggling with first quarters right now. Their starting group is really, really struggling to get off to good starts. They struggled against Brooklyn, obviously, giving up 42 points in the first quarter of that game. They were trailing against Washington. They were trailing against Charlotte. They trailed by 12 against Boston, which may be a little more excusable. The Magic are easing themselves into games too much. They aren't playing with the intensity and ferocity that we saw them play with early in the season. And look, it's not about scoring. Scoring 20 points in that quarter stunk. But the Magic's defense wasn't forceful. They weren't playing with a ton of confidence and aggression. And that's the part that's got to change. Everyone's talked about it. We've heard several players talk about how they need to come out and be the aggressors. They need to come out with their hair on fire a little bit early on in the game. And again, I've said this often, I don't care how much that starting group scores. I care that they set a tone defensively. And I think I was looking at the stat sheet midway through the first quarter. The Magic hadn't committed a foul yet. And that's a small thing. Magic only had 21 fouls in the game total. Cleveland had 27. That's a small thing. That's not like a humongous thing. But it's just about setting a physical tone. It's just about letting the other team know that you're physically there, that you're physically present, that nothing's going to be easy tonight. And that's something this team is missing. We talked a lot about how the Magic need to be better defensively. And they weren't. They just plain and simply were not better defensively. Things tightened up as the game went on. They still forced 17 turnovers for 20 points. Things got better as they went on. They gave up 22 points in the fourth quarter, only 56 in the second half, which is a pretty solid number. But they gave up 65 in the first, 37-28, 34 in the third. This Magic team has to get back to playing forceful, physical defense. And if it costs you a couple fouls, it costs you a couple fouls. I like that the Magic only gave up 20 free throws. That's a good sign. But it's about their identity. And again, this is what we talked about the last 2 days. The Magic getting back to their defensive identity. They didn't have it in this one. That was part of the problem. That was part of this team getting down. And once you're down, now you're climbing uphill. It is very hard to climb uphill. It's not something the Magic have done very often this year. And look, Cleveland got hot. They made some tough threes. And so on a night when Orlando could hit anything from deep, Cleveland made some tough shots. But they also outworked Orlando. They had 10 offensive rebounds for 19 second chance points. Orlando only had 11 second chance points, which is such a big key for Orlando trying to make up that 3-point deficit. Cleveland had 4 of those offensive rebounds and 7 of those second chance points in the first quarter. Paolo said it best after the game. Outside of that first quarter, they played pretty well. I don't want to say they played that. I don't know if I would say they played pretty well, but they played well enough to win outside of that first quarter. In fact, they outscored Cleveland by 7 the rest of the way. So it's just that first 12 minutes that killed them again. Just like it did against Brooklyn when they were climbing uphill the entire game. And look, this team fights. Give them that credit, but we're not in that credit-giving business. We're in the business of winning games. We're trying to make the playoffs here. Wins matter. Results matter. And Orlando did some good things, but very clearly still has a lot more work to do. Again, they threw away one of Paolo's best games. And Paolo had to take on that big scoring burden because no one else was taking it on for him. And then once Orlando got their defense going, that's when the shot making really hurt them. If they would have made 3-pointers at their regular rate, let's even say 33.3%. If they made 33% of their 23 threes, that's 8 3-pointers. I think. Let me double check my math there. If they would have made 7, 8 3-pointers, they made 5 more 3-pointers. 5 more 3-pointers is 15 points and a 10-point game. That matters. So a lot of this game did come down to the Magic making or missing shots. You can live with that result. This game really came down to the Magic's defense not being sharp early. And that's a bigger concern because there's a big injury that we're going to talk about here in a minute that could further upend the Magic's defense and the team's starting lineup. So Magic have their work cut out for them, and we're going to have to see what this team eventually does. We're going to go through the box score, talk about that injury coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is my preferred daily fantasy game. I don't know about you, but I love going to Prize Picks, picking out a couple of the entries, or picking out a couple of the options that they have, putting together an entry and watching the money come in. I usually do a 5-player entry, and all you have to do is get 3 right to essentially get your money back, which I think is just awesome because the other fantasy games I played, I'm literally just praying to get my money back. I don't feel confident that I'm actually going to get it back. That's why Prize Picks is my favorite. All you have to do is put together an entry of 2 to 6 players and predict whether they will score more or less than their projected numbers. Basketball season is here, and you can now even pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. I did one of these over Thanksgiving. It's a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you can take LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Isn't that fun? Makes your whole weekend a little spicier. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with this insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Okay, let's go through the final box scores. The Orlando Magic fall to the Cleveland Cavaliers 121-111. We talked about Paolo Banchero. He's obviously the superstar of the night. 42 points, 16 for 26 shooting, 9 for 12 from the foul line, 6 rebounds. Again, the only real complaint that I would have, a few too many turnovers, especially early on, just trying to test Jared Allen and test Evan Mobley. But Banchero picked his matchup. Orlando was hunting Jared Allen on the perimeter. They were getting that switch onto him. and letting Paolo just cook him off the dribble, and he was just able to blow right by him. He had that short corner fade away from the baseline that looked really, really good. Just made everything that he put up. My only complaint was in the third quarter, he was really rolling and just carrying the team and was just clearly the only offensive option that the Magic had. And just they couldn't space him out to get the ball moving. And so they were just slowing down the offense completely to run ISOs and run these high pick and rolls for him. And you could tell that Cleveland was sitting on it, that it wasn't really getting the team into a good flow. And while, it didn't hurt them, it definitely slowed them down. They definitely threw away a lot of possessions, just trying to force the ball to Paolo and just letting him, having him just eat up the shot clock in ISO situations. Magic had to move the ball a whole lot better. 22 assists on 41 field goal makes is okay. But I think everyone agrees the Magic could have moved the ball a lot better in this one. Franz Wagner really struggled in this one. 14 points on 3 for 16 shooting, 0 for 5 from deep, 8 for 10 from the foul line. Did have 9 assists, did have 6 rebounds, did have 3 steals. So I think he contributed well in other areas. Franz's biggest problem was that Evan Mobley was guarding him. I think they respected Franz and his threat a little bit more than Paolo. So Mobley got the call on Franz, and Franz tried to drive right into him on several occasions. Just a great defensive effort from Evan Mobley. Franz could not work his way around him for the usual shots that he gets around the basket. Just his strength couldn't push him off a spot and create space. So it was just a really rough night for Franz. Just trying to find his rhythm and find his way to the basket. So just a really, really tough night for him. Anthony Black, a really solid night. 11 points, 5 for 5 shooting, made his only free throw. A lot of that on cuts to the basket. Orlando needed movement. They needed some energy. Black really provided it. And they're going to need Anthony Black to be this aggressive and this assertive, trying to get to the basket, trying to make things happen. For the reason I'm about to explain here in just a couple players. Off the bench, Cole Anthony, 19 points, 8 for 14 shooting, 2 for 3 from the foul line, 7 rebounds for him. Again, got himself going, really did a good job creating space where Franz Wagner couldn't create space using his strength. Cole Anthony was able to do so, was able to kind of blow guys off the ball a little bit, create some room at the basket to make his shots. Mo Wagner, 11 points, 5 for 7 shooting. A solid game from him. Did have 3 turnovers, kind of struggled a little bit with some screening. This was just a really disjointed game offensively for Orlando. I'm not totally surprised they shot poorly from 3. They just really struggled to get the ball moving, create some of those feet set threes that the Magic really thrive on. So the ball was not hopping around the perimeter and not really getting where it needed to go. So, the Magic left a lot on the board and a lot to be desired with how they played overall. So here's the news that I've been teasing and didn't really get to. Jalen Suggs left the game in the second quarter. He left the game initially in the first quarter. After stealing the ball and it looked like he kind of stubbed his toe or like rolled his ankle a little bit, left the game briefly with an ankle injury, came back in the second quarter and maybe 2-3 possessions into that stint, came down hard on his foot, immediately went to the floor, immediately kind of leaned up against the basket and needed some assistance leaving the floor. He was officially diagnosed with a right ankle strain, not a sprain, a right ankle strain. And his status is certainly up in the air. He's going to get more testing when they get back to Orlando. He ended up playing only 9.5 minutes. To say the least, this is a pretty big loss because he's just such an energizer bunny for this team. Really gives them a lot of their juice and kind of picks up the pace when they need it. Like this team plays slow, except for Jalen Suggs kind of forces them, kind of nudges them to run a little bit more and to get out and transition and seek opportunities to get easy baskets. Jalen Suggs is the heart of this team. And any hope of improving defensively and being the kind of defensive team this Magic team wants to be, Jalen Suggs embodies that. And so this is a major loss. For however long Jalen Suggs is out, and I anticipate that he's not going to play Friday. I think there's a very good chance he doesn't play Monday against Cleveland either. They're going to be patient. And so we may not see him for a week. It's a big loss. And so the Magic are going to have to scramble, going to have to find a way to fill in. Gary Harris is going to have to play a lot better. He's missing threes right now. His biggest value is his 3-point shot. 1 for 7 in the game, 0 for 4 from deep. I think he's missed his last 15 3-point attempts. He's got to make some shots. He's got to make some threes for this team to stay alive. And that's going to be a big absence to not have Jalen Suggs out there. The Magic shoot 48.8% from the floor overall, 2 for 23 from beyond the arc, 27 for 37 from the foul line, 11 turnovers for 13 points. Again, some good things. Orlando did win the paint battle 68-58, but 58 points in the paint is way too much. Donovan Mitchell with 35 points, 12 for 24, 5 for 10 from 3, 6 for 9 from the foul line. Darius Garland had 26 points on 10 for 18 shooting, just really killed the Magic in the mid-range. So that's where a lot of those paint points come from. Max Strus at 17 on 4 for 8 shooting from deep. Evan Mobley finished with 16. Jared Allen with 8 points, 11 rebounds in a lot of foul trouble. Mitchell, Allen, and Mobley each had 4 turnovers. So Orlando, I think, did a good job forcing turnovers, 17 turnovers for 20 Orlando points. But at the end of the day, Magic gave up too much dribble penetration, too much scoring at the paint, really struggled at the point of attack to keep their man in front of them. Donovan Mitchell's tough cover, and then eventually gave up too many three-pointers. Again, 14 for 34 is a good percentage. Didn't give up a great number of raw three-pointers, but when you're only making 2, that's just killer. If the Magic had made 7 three-pointers, 5 more three-pointers, we got ourselves a game. The Magic just could not keep up from beyond the arc, especially early. Again, 7 of the 14 makes came in the first quarter. That just put the Magic in a big hole, and they were struggling to get uphill. Magic have to make sure they get off to a better start. That's just plain and simple what has to happen. They have to win that first quarter. They have to win those starters minutes, especially to give themselves a chance and set up their bench to really put the screws on teams, especially who they're playing Friday night in the Detroit Pistons. The Cleveland Cavaliers defeat the Orlando Magic 121-111. Orlando back in action again Friday at the Amway Center against the Detroit Pistons on an 18-game losing streak. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts. Search TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and also myself. Do download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can also check us out on YouTube if you're not already at youtube.com/LockedOnMagic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub. Go to patreon.com/OrlandoMagicHub. And thank you all again for your support. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.